Hello everyone, welcome to News Extra, and with the holidays comes the potential for, well, some safety issues that come up when it comes to fires, and one of them involving Thanksgiving. I have Scottsbluff Fire Department Fire Marshal Anthony Murphy with me. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You know, when we're talking about cooking for Thanksgiving, people don't necessarily think about fire safety, but there are some things that they should keep in mind as they get prepared for that big feast.
Absolutely. From my perspective on things, the number one cause of any home fire is cooking. And to further that, the number one day for home cooking fires is Thanksgiving, which I enjoy the food part of Thanksgiving, obviously. But yeah, so wanting to remind folks to not leave that cooking unattended.
Yeah.
And keeping mindful, one of the recent fires in the area, roll of paper towels on top of the stove.
Oh, wow.
So being mindful of, as you're making your Thanksgiving Day creations, as it were, making sure you're mindful of where you're putting the paper towels, your washcloths, the pot holders.
I was going to say anything that could be combustible, you want to be careful of.
So being mindful of that and unattended cooking. People, I know the turkeys take a while, that kind of thing. But be mindful of what you're leaving on the stove and the temperature that it's on, and make sure that you're cognizant of what's happening with your food on that stove.
Yeah, absolutely, and also making sure that you're using stoves in a proper manner. And I seem to recall a fire a few years ago involving a stove that is actually being used for heating of a mobile home at the time, not necessarily for cooking, but using those stoves and those cooktop surfaces in the manner in which they're intended.
Absolutely. And I'd be remiss, I know I say this every time I talk with you, but reminding folks about working smoke alarms.
Yeah.
We just had daylight savings time, as much as everybody dreads that time of year. Good reminder to change those batteries, make sure your smoke alarms are working. Anytime something does go awry on the stove, you want to make sure everybody's aware of that as soon as possible so you can take action, get out of the house, call 911. If the fire's in the oven, we like to remind people, keep the door closed.
Oh, yeah.
Don't try to
deprive
open the door.
it from oxygen, and keep it from getting more oxygen.
Absolutely. And dishes on top of the stove, if it's safe to do so, put the lid back on, turn the burner off, again, only if it's safe to do so.
Baking soda, having that handy nearby. Yep,
baking soda, a lot of the home fire extinguishers, a lot of kitchens have the little white extinguisher with them. Just as long as it's safe to do so. Otherwise, we'd much rather you call 911, get the fire departments rolling if it's not us, if it's your local department,
Sure.
Mitchell, Morrow, Gehring, any of the areas.
Okay.
So.
And of course, with Thanksgiving, there are different cooking methods that we do need to address, and we'll be right back on News Extra in just a moment to talk with you about that. And we're back on News Extra, and my guest today is Anthony Murphy, who's the fire inspector, fire marshal, if you will, for Scottsbluff Fire Department. Again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
There are different methods for cooking that are out there. Some of them may be a little more safe than others. One that always draws attention this time of year is fried turkey. Let's talk a little bit about the proper steps with this, because there are some things that people who, if they haven't done it before, have no experience, they can get themselves in a world of hurt.
I enjoy the fried turkey as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
But I do want to take a moment to remind folks of the correct way to use those turkey fryers. Just about any of the stores you go to that sell them, read through the manual that comes with them, and pretty consistently, no matter which brand, make, model of turkey fryer you use, those manuals are all going to tell you to remember to make sure that turkey's fully thawed.
Yes.
Any of the ice, that kind of thing, that does not work well with the grease or oil that you would put in.
It creates instantaneous spattering and bubbles and not good.
Correct. And further, making sure that you don't overfill the oil. It's always tough. They'll give you some recommended methods to make sure you got the right amount of oil in that fryer, so when you lower the turkey down in, it's not overflowing, and that's when you get the big ball of fire that comes out of those fryers.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe a test run with just some water to start with, to see how much liquid is in there, to get the full coverage of the turkey before you add the oil, and then actually do the real deal. Maybe
just remember that water and oil do not mix.
No, I'm just saying. I'm
right.
just saying. Do a test run, not over a flame. Drop that turkey in there thawed, just to give it a quick bath to show how much liquid needs to be in there to get that proper coverage, and then do your switch out.
Exactly. And further, because accidents can happen, don't try to use your turkey fryer in the house, on the deck,
no. In a garage.
Make sure that you're at least 10 feet away from any nearby structures. That way, if something were to go wrong, number one, we don't want anybody hurt.
Yeah.
Number two, try to avoid any chance that an accident will spread beyond that fryer and to the building, to the house, to the occupants inside the house.
Fire extinguisher nearby and handy.
Absolutely.
Definitely a precaution that you want to take. And of course, fires can happen on a regular cook stove as well. Whether it's propane, natural gas, even the electric, those can have conflagrations that happen, and you just need to be prepared just in case.
Absolutely.
So a little bit of turkey safety, if you will. Not the normal one that you hear about this time of year about cooking to the right temperature and calling the Butterball hotline, but certainly some tips that you need to have handy with you as you prepare that feast for Thanksgiving Day. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us on News Extra today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.